There is this incredibly universal, I'd almost call it a biological human experience that happens right in the immediate aftermath of making a major life choice.
Oh, yeah.
Like, imagine you finally, pull the trigger on a massive decision. You quit a super safe job to start your own company, or you pack up your entire life and move across the country to a new city.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe, I don't know, maybe you end a really long-term relationship.
Right.
And the initial rush of adrenaline, that kind of fades, and then you wake up the very next morning. And what happens?
The panic sets in.
Exactly. There is this immediate, overwhelming urge to prove to ourselves, and frankly, like to everyone watching us, that it was the right decision.
Oh, it is a staggering amount of psychological pressure to put on ourselves. It really is.
Well,
Like the ink isn't even dry on the apartment lease or, the resignation letter. And already we are just frantically scanning the horizon for evidence that we made the correct move.
Yeah, looking for signs.
Right. We rarely just live with the choice. We immediately begin this arduous labor of justifying it.
And if the immediate outcome looks good, right, we breathe a huge sigh of release
Yeah.
and proudly declare that we are, absolute geniuses who made the brilliant choice.
Of course.
Naturally.
But if the initial outcome is painful or chaotic in any way, we instantly conclude that the choice itself was a massive mistake. And today, we are going to challenge that entire framework.
It's a big one.
It is. We are doing a deep dive into the core arguments of a really fascinating project called Reflective Humanism. We have a stack of their philosophical frameworks and manifestos in front of us, specifically document 116 and the core fields texts.
Mm-hmm.
And the overarching goal, the mission here, is to completely deconstruct the very architecture of human decision-making.
Yeah, and the central proposition of this project is quite radical, honestly. They ask us to consider a totally different metric for success.
Okay.
Like, what if a genuinely healthy choice is not one that eventually proves to be correct?
Wait, really? Yeah. What if a healthy choice is simply one that remains open to being reobserved when reality inevitably changes?
Okay, let's unpack this because that completely flips how most of us operate on a daily basis.
It really does.
I mean, we have to start by looking at why we judge our past choices so harshly based on their outcomes. And the source material argues there is a fundamental, almost invisible fallacy in how we grade our own lives.
Right. And what's fascinating here is that we use outcomes, success, failure, joy, pain. We use those to retroactively grade the quality of our decisions.
Right.
We treat the future as if it is a perfectly fair, perfectly objective judge of the past. But outcomes are inherently contaminated.
Contaminated how? Like just by random stuff?
Exactly. They are this messy mixture of chance, environmental shifts, other people's independent decisions that you can't control, the passage of time, and completely unpredictable black swan events.
Right. So that means a perfectly rational, well-thought-out choice can still yield a terrible outcome purely because of bad luck. Like, you could buy a house after doing all the right inspections, paying for the best surveyor, everything checks out, and a month later, a freak storm destroys the roof.
Right, and you think, oh, I shouldn't have bought this house.
Exactly. But conversely, a totally reckless, poor choice, like, I don't know, putting your entire life savings on a single spin of the roulette wheel, that can randomly succeed.
Yeah, you hit your number and suddenly you're a genius financial planner.
Right. But the quality of the decision was terrible.
Precisely. The quality of a decision is fundamentally distinct from the quality of its outcome. Yet, human nature inextricably links the two together, and this cognitive trap becomes significantly more dangerous the longer a choice has been in place.
Okay, why is that?
Well, over a span of years, long-term choices, think about your career path, your marriage, your deeply held political ideology, or where you have chosen to root your family, they stop being mere decisions. They fuse with your identity. The decision crystallizes into a role, and that role becomes a load-bearing pillar of your self-image.
Wow, okay. Whenever we hit these abstract concepts, I always try to ground them in a concrete analogy. And reading through the reflective humanism texts, this scenario came to mind.
Let's hear it.
It's like taking a really difficult high-stakes exam. You study, you do all the math correctly based on the material provided, and you confidently hand in your paper.
Right.
But then, while the teacher's grading it, they randomly erase and change all the questions on your sheet.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And when you get a failing grade back, you sit there and blame yourself for being stupid. Like, why on earth do we blame ourselves for getting a bad grade when the environment around the decision literally changed while we were waiting for the result?
That analogy captures the mechanism perfectly, actually. We blame ourselves because of the protective shield of identity.
The protective shield.
Yeah. When a decision is fully fused with your self-image, questioning the choice begins to feel like a direct attack on your own worth. If admitting a past flaw feels psychologically equivalent to admitting, I am a fool,
Yeah, that's heavy.
then the cost of self-reflection becomes too high to bear. So justification steps in as a psychological stabilization mechanism. It protects our sense of self-continuity. And to be fair, we genuinely need some fixed points just to function in daily life.
Right.
If we relentlessly re-examined every single choice every single morning, we would be entirely paralyzed.
Totally. I mean, if you're listening to this deep dive on your commute right now, heading to a job you deeply dislike simply because you spent 4 years getting a specialized degree for it, you are living this friction in real time.
Absolutely.
You can't wake up every day and wonder if you should still be an accountant or still be married or still live in Chicago. You would literally lose your mind.
You would. The danger arises, though, when that entirely natural need to understand our past morphs into a rigid, non-negotiable demand to justify our past.
Right.
When that line is crossed, we stop observing the reality unfolding in front of us and we dedicate all our energy to defending a ghost.
Defending a ghost, you mean our past self.
Exactly, our past self.
So, if we can't judge our choices purely by outcomes, without driving ourselves crazy, how are we supposed to look at the concept of commitment? Because society usually drills into us that responsibility is basically synonymous with consistency.
Right, just holding the line.
Yeah, like you stick with a choice simply because you started it. A good captain goes down with a ship no matter what.
Well, the framework pushes back heavily on that traditional definition. If you define responsibility purely as consistency, the mindset of, I chose this path, therefore I will never deviate from it,
Right.
you completely lose the ability to respond to changing conditions. Reflective humanism proposes a subtle but really profound shift in vocabulary here.
Okay.
They say responsibility should be viewed as responsiveness.
Responsiveness.
Yes, it is the ongoing ability to observe the delta, the difference or the change in circumstances after a decision has been set in motion.
They introduce this phrase in the text that I haven't been able to stop thinking about, which is decision as hypothesis.
Yes, a crucial concept. It's wild, right? Like, a decision isn't this absolute permanent declaration of the future that you carve into stone. It is a hypothesis placed on the conditions that were available to you at that exact moment in time.
Exactly. And a hypothesis, by its very definition in the scientific method, it never assumes it will be perfectly right forever. It remains in continuous contact with reality.
It's testing something.
Yes, it is a format intentionally designed to be updated, refined, or even completely discarded by incoming information.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit, though.
Sure.
Because treating our deepest commitments as mere hypotheses, it sounds incredibly flaky.
It can't sound that way, yeah.
Right. Like it sounds like the ultimate philosophical loophole for someone to just abandon a difficult project the minute it gets hard, or to walk out on a family. What about choices that irreversibly impact other people's lives?
Right.
You can't just casually say, well, my marriage was a hypothesis, the data is trending downward, so I am going to bounce. That's terrible. That is a crucial critique, and I'm glad you brought it up because the source material explicitly addresses that tension. The framework is not arguing for a lack of commitment, nor does it take irreversible choices lightly at all.
Okay, so how do they defend it?
It introduces a concept called the separation of verdicts.
Separation of verdicts. Walk us through how that works in practice.
So it means we have the cognitive capacity to hold two thoughts entirely separately in our minds, the validity of what we knew then and the reality of what we see now.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. You can look at a past decision and say, given the conditions, the resources, and frankly, the emotional maturity I had 5 years ago, that was the most logical hypothesis I could form. Today, however, the conditions have fundamentally changed.
Right, and the environment shifted.
Exactly. And acknowledging that reality has shifted does not require you to conclude, oh, I was an idiot to make that choice back then. You do not have to turn your past into a humiliating mistake in order to update your behavior in the present. In the context of a marriage, like you mentioned, you can remain fiercely committed to the relationship while simultaneously updating your understanding of who your partner is today, rather than rigidly demanding they conform to the exact reasons you married them a decade ago.
Wow, okay. That distinction really takes the heavy burden of shame out of pivoting.
It does.
It removes the sting of realizing you need to change course.
Hmm.
But we need to scale this up, I think. Because if this intense pressure to justify past choices lives inside us at the individual psychological level, it inevitably infects the larger systems we build, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Individual minds form organizations, and the justification pressure just compounds.
The text actually refers to this as the gravity of relationships. When we commit to someone, or even when we firmly decide to distance ourselves from someone, we lock in a judgment.
Right.
And the psychological observation here is quite unsettling. After we choose a partner, we often begin to observe their current actions merely as data points to prove that our past decision to be with them was correct.
Right, so we aren't actually looking at the human being in front of us anymore.
No, not really.
We are looking at a mirror of our own past judgment. We are fiercely protecting the original decision, rather than engaging with the living, breathing, evolving person standing in the kitchen with us today.
Yeah, and the mechanism operates in reverse as well. If you make the really painful decision to cut ties with someone, you might start interpreting every single thing they do moving forward as absolute proof that leaving them was the right call.
Right, like, oh, look, they were late to pick up the kids. I knew I was right to divorce them.
Exactly. In both scenarios, your primary objective is keeping your past self safe from the vulnerability of being wrong. You lose the ability to see the present moment clearly.
So what does this all mean when human systems naturally seek to protect past choices like this? What happens when we give those systems massive budgets and institutional power?
It gets messy.
Yeah, because the reflective humanism texts scale this up to corporations and governments, and the mechanics of the sunk cost fallacy become genuinely terrifying.
Very much so. At the organizational level, this psychological flaw manifests as bureaucratic self-preservation.
Classic.
Right. It is the overwhelming institutional pressure to protect past investments. The larger the capital or political investment, the greater the pressure to prove it was a stroke of genius. Very quickly, the primary goal of the organization quietly overrides any current rationality.
Right. The unspoken objective just becomes maintaining the legitimacy of the past decision at all costs.
Yeah.
Let's apply that to a real-world scenario.
Mhm.
Say a mid-sized company spends, I don't know, $50 million on a massive new enterprise software system.
Okay, very common.
Right. And it takes 2 years to implement. Once it launches, it's an absolute nightmare. The employees hate it, productivity tanks, and it doesn't even do what it was promised to do.
Typical.
Yeah. But the executive who championed it is now the CEO. So instead of cutting their losses, the company forms committees to force people to use it.
Right, and they fire the middle managers who complain that the system is broken.
Yes. They spend another $20 million on training just to make the broken system look viable. The entire corporate apparatus mobilizes to protect the ego of the original decision.
The mechanism you just described is exactly how an abstract decision acquires a physical history and begins to literally fight for its own survival.
Like a virus.
It really is. And the text emphasizes that this is a structural issue, not merely a psychological quirk of one stubborn CEO. The organization starts making a cascade of additional, highly irrational decisions solely to build a defensive wall around the original one.
Right.
And at the level of civilization, the exact same mechanics apply to long-standing energy policies, legacy institutions, or entrenched diplomatic stances.
Wow.
They become so structurally rigid that proposing to change them is treated as an existential threat to the system itself, rather than a necessary update to an outdated hypothesis.
So the system is trapped in a loop of making decisions just to protect older decisions. We end up locked in this rigid, decaying orbit where no amount of new data can actually change our trajectory. But wait, if human systems are already this biased towards self-justification, what happens when we introduce artificial intelligence into the mix?
AI.
Yeah, because we are handing ourselves a tool designed to perfectly mimic and validate human reasoning.
AI is the great accelerant of this specific human flaw. The manifestos detail how AI introduces a profound structural complication. It makes complex justification incredibly cheap and instantaneous.
Right.
If you ask an advanced AI model, why was my decision to aggressively expand my business into that new market the right choice, it will generate a perfectly articulated, highly compelling, flawlessly logical defense of your actions.
It's like hiring a brilliantly articulate yes-man lawyer.
That is exactly it.
A lawyer who possesses the sum of human knowledge and who will vigorously argue whichever side of the case you prompt them to argue. They are so remarkably convincing that they ultimately blind you to the objective truth of your situation. You walk away from the screen feeling totally vindicated and incredibly smart, but you are further from reality than you have ever been.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the source material introduces two vital concepts for interacting with technology: the atmospheric health scan and the ethics of distance.
Ethics of distance, I like that.
Yeah. The framework insists that we are fundamentally misusing AI when we treat it as an oracle of absolute truth or an automated validation engine for our egos.
So instead of using AI as an oracle to, pat us on the back, it sounds like we should treat it more like a sparring partner,
Yes.
like a neutral surface to test our assumptions and map out our blind spots before they completely ruin us.
A sparring partner is a brilliant way to frame the ethics of distance. The goal is to use the technology to create what the text calls spare capacity, or an inner margin.
A buffer.
Exactly. It provides a buffer between your ego and your actions. Instead of asking the AI to judge the outcome, you use it to run an atmospheric health scan on the premises of your choice.
Can you give us a concrete example of what an atmospheric health scan prompt actually looks like? Like, how does a person execute this in their daily life without falling into that validation trap?
Sure. So a healthy interaction would look like prompting the AI with something like, act as a completely neutral observer. Here are the three primary assumptions I used to justify starting this project 2 years ago. Based on current market data, which of these variables have fundamentally changed?
Oh, that's good. That's very clinical.
It is. Or, even more powerfully, you could say, analyze this strategic plan I just wrote and forcefully argue the exact opposite perspective. Show me the blind spots I am ignoring because I want this to succeed.
Right, because by phrasing it that way, you are explicitly commanding the AI to ignore your ego.
Exactly. The AIA's role becomes quietly reflecting the structural weaknesses in your thinking without aggressively interfering or passing moral judgment. It shouldn't push a hidden agenda. By using it this way, you cultivate a silent environment, an atmosphere where you can objectively examine your own cognitive loops without feeling personally attacked.
Wow.
It practically forces you to decouple your inherent self-worth from the strategic decisions you are trying to analyze.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, because we are finally arriving at the practical synthesis of all this theory.
The how-to.
Yeah, the how-to.
Yeah.
We've talked about the trap of using outcomes to grade choices, the extreme danger of fusing our identity with our decisions, the terrifying sunk cost fallacies of corporate systems, and how AI can trick us into cheap, hollow justification.
Right.
So, what actually makes a choice healthy? How are we supposed to live, make commitments, and build systems moving forward using this reflective humanism framework?
The fundamental paradigm shift is permanently moving away from the idea that a good choice is defined by achieving perfect, permanent stability. A healthy decision is not one that remains frozen in amber forever.
Right, it's not a fossil.
No. A truly healthy decision requires what the text terms post-decision fluidity.
Post-decision fluidity, meaning the structural ability to safely reobserve the choice after it has been made.
Exactly. And the text offers incredibly practical markers for identifying this fluidity in the wild. A healthy choice means the original reasons for deciding are clearly recorded and remembered, so the past premises can be honestly fact-checked against the present reality.
Right.
It means dissent, doubt, and feelings of discomfort are preserved and examined rather than immediately suppressed as acts of disloyalty.
Oh, I love that.
Right. And most importantly, it means the system in question, whether that is your own mind, your marriage, or the company you run, it possesses the elasticity to accommodate change without entirely collapsing.
So changing a decision isn't a sign of weakness. It doesn't mean you failed the big test of life.
Yeah.
As the source material beautifully puts it, changing a choice is evidence that the decision system is still alive.
Yes.
If you literally cannot change your mind, your system is dead.
It is the critical difference between dynamic stability and static rigidity. Think of a massive skyscraper swaying in the intense winds of a storm. It survives the hurricane precisely because it is engineered to be fluid. It absorbs the energy of the changing environment. If the structure were perfectly rigid and incapable of movement, the wind would just snap it in half.
The beautiful paradox at the heart of this framework, I think, is that reflective humanism doesn't demand that we achieve some state of pure robotic neutrality after making a choice.
No.
They readily acknowledge that as a human impossibility. When you pick a path in life, your entire worldview shifts to accommodate it. You invest your limited time, you build deep relationships, you take on new roles. you are going to develop a bias toward the life you are actively building.
It is entirely natural and honestly largely necessary to lean heavily into the choice you have made in order to give it a fighting chance to succeed.
Exactly. The goal isn't to be a perfectly neutral, emotionless observer of your own life. The
Yeah.
goal is simply to not completely close the window of reobservation.
Right.
You just have to leave it cracked open 1 single inch. You just need to build a tiny protected mechanism in your routine to occasionally pause and ask, are the fundamental conditions that made this the right choice 3 years ago still true today?
And keeping that small opening prevents the decision and your self-image from fully fusing into an unbreakable concrete block.
Yeah.
It allows for continuous generation, a quiet, ongoing updating of your trajectory. This steady recalibration prevents that massive, catastrophic, and deeply painful collision with reality that inevitably occurs when a rigidly defended past decision finally breaks down under the weight of the present.
That is a brilliant way to recap the sweeping journey we've been on today.
It's been a ride.
We started by severing the false link between the outcome and the inherent quality of the choice itself. We redefined our deepest commitments not as permanent prisons, but as living hypotheses that we place on the ever-shifting present moment. We explored how defending those outdated hypotheses can turn us into ghosts in our own relationships and basically bankroll the destruction of organizations. Finally, we looked at how we must vigorously resist using AI as an automated justification machine, choosing instead to use it as a sparring partner to map our blind spots.
Perfectly said.
Ultimately, it all comes down to keeping that window of reobservation cracked open.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I know there is one final, incredibly poetic concept from the very end of the Core Fields text that you wanted to leave us with.
Yes. There is a concept detailed in the closing chapter called transparent pain.
Transparent pain.
Usually when we feel deep emotional friction, doubt, or a lingering sense of regret about a past choice we've made, our immediate, deeply ingrained reaction is to think, failed.
Yeah.
I made a terrible mistake, and this psychological pain is my deserved punishment.
It is the absolute worst feeling in the world. It is that heavy knot in your stomach at 3 in the morning telling you that you somehow ruined the trajectory of your own life.
Well, reflective humanism reframes that 3 a.m. knot in the stomach completely. What if that pain is not a punishment at all?
Okay.
The text describes it as a phase difference, a structural friction. It is literally the sound of the gears grinding between our rigid, linear internal operating system, which is desperately trying to hold on to the safety of the past, and the nonlinear, relentlessly changing external world.
So the pain is just the friction between how things were when we made the choice and how things actually are right now.
Yes, transparent pain is simply a neutral notification from reality. It is not a moral judgment telling you that you are a failure. It is reality quietly, persistently inviting you to update your hypothesis.
Wow.
It is the friction of the world politely tapping on the glass, telling your internal system that it is time to open the window of reobservation.
It's not a punishment, it's a prompt. That changes absolutely everything about how we experience doubt. Instead of running from the friction or drinking it away or hiring an AI to generate 1,000 reasons why the friction is wrong, we could just sit quietly with it and ask, what is this feeling asking me to update?
Beautifully said.
We're going to leave you to mull over that thought. Thank you for joining us as we mapped out the hidden architecture of our choices. Keep your hypotheses open, leave that window cracked just an inch, and we will see you on the next deep dive.